Great. So it's about 200 people. I think that is a good time to start. Again, thank you so much for joining us after school and work. My name is Malika. I am going to be your host this evening. And today at Success at School, we are really excited to bring the world's largest law firm, and we've got Dentons here. We are going to discuss about Dentons and how they are providing you the opportunity to become a solicitor and a lawyer without going down the traditional university pathway. We are going to hear from Rupali, who is the Early Careers Coordinator, and two solicitor apprentices who are going to be discussing their apprenticeship journey, and they're going to answer any questions that you do have. But before I turn the discussion over to Rupali, if you do have any questions at all, please feel free to pop it in the chat, and then we're going to do a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and we'll try and get through as many questions as we can. Just so that you are aware, this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel at Success at School after the webinar, and I'll pop a link in the chat to make sure that you guys can access that tomorrow. But without much further ado, I'm going to pass it over to the team at Dentons, who are going to be discussing everything and anything that you need to know about starting your law career.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. So I am one of the first people from Dentons that you'll be hearing from today. My name is Rupali. I work in the Early Careers team, and I just want to say thank you again for joining this evening. So my role in the Early Careers team is kind of part of the recruitment for our apprenticeship roles, as well as our vacation schemes and our training contract opportunities, which are for those kind of at university and onwards. So we also do kind of outreach with schools, with colleges, and then also with students very much like yourself at events like this. So we're going to cover a lot in the next 60 minutes, but I won't kind of spend too much time before getting started with that. So kind of the first, what we're kind of going to look at today is your time as a solicitor apprentice, if that's kind of what you're looking at the moment, and kind of what that actually entails and how that is structured over the course of the programme itself. We'll also take a look at the application process so that you can see what steps are involved within the recruitment process, kind of how to approach those, and then kind of more so for the application itself. And then likewise, we've got two of our solicitor apprentices who will be joining towards the latter part of this event, and they'll also share their top tips, and they'll be there for that live Q&A as well. So to get started, we have kind of the basics. So to take it really from the top, you'll hear the phrase commercial lawyer or commercial solicitor. And what that really means is they're a solicitor who practices within a certain area of law. So to kind of look at what the role of a solicitor is, in the UK, we have two main types of lawyers. So you have solicitors, you also have barristers. Barristers are those who are self-employed or they work in chambers. They tend to have less kind of direct contact with their clients. And they also work very closely with solicitors. They're kind of two sides of the same coin in terms of clients and practicing law. Firms like Dentons are mostly made up of solicitors, and some of those will work with barristers on some cases. And our apprentices and trainees are actually trained to become solicitors themselves. So solicitors are kind of those people who you will kind of tend to think of if you hear someone saying that they're going to go see a lawyer. They will normally work for a law firm or an organisation. If you think of lots of different companies, like large companies, they will have their own legal teams, but then there'll be specific law firms as well who will deal with different areas of law too. Within law firms, for example, there are often specialists who deal in different areas of law. They might be specialised to practice in a certain area of law, in a niche of law. And what they tend to do on a day-to-day basis is really organise. So they offer advice, they negotiate for their clients, they might be drafting legal documents and working on those, and they're generally problem solving legal issues. Like I said, they might be involved in some court work. So, for example, you might have that traditional idea of kind of a courtroom and a criminal case going on. Not really the case in terms of how commercial law works, but there might be kind of disputes, dispute resolution. Sometimes things get taken to court. And in this sense, our solicitors wouldn't necessarily act as advocates for the clients in court wearing a wig, wearing the robes. Barristers do that, but they'll be involved within the process. So there are two paths into a career in law, a career in commercial law, if we're going to be specific about that. You have the two kind of here on the screen. So you've got the training contract, which is one pathway. You've also got the solicitor apprenticeship, which is another pathway, the second pathway. Both of these involve so you'll be studying kind of beyond school and college, so kind of university courses, postgraduate courses. You'll be completing a degree along the way for both of those. You'll also be completing a postgraduate qualification, which is called the Solicitors Qualifying Exams, or SQE. There's lots of acronyms in law. You'll hear different kinds of terms being told to you across the rest of this event, but don't worry about it. It will hopefully all kind of sink in and settle into your head soon. But that is a postgraduate course which is involved in kind of both of those pathways. Another thing which kind of both of these pathways entail is certified time working within a law firm. So whether that's the training contract itself, it kind of says what it does in the name. It is a contract for training, but then also with the solicitor apprenticeship as well, you have a set period of time working within a law firm to get certified. Altogether, the aspects of studying and training mean that you have the skills and the knowledge required to become a qualified solicitor, and you're signed off by the Solicitors Regulation Authority to be a solicitor. One kind of important thing to note, and I think which more and more people are kind of realizing and recognizing, is that both of these pathways are recognized routes to qualification. And at the end of the training contract or the solicitor apprenticeship at Dentons, all of those roles are encouraged to apply for associate roles going forwards as well. So staying with the firm, taking that next step forward as well. So it really is the beginning of a full career. More broadly as well, so there's countless careers within the legal industry which can involve legal study without becoming a qualified lawyer, or indeed kind of other wider roles within a law firm, which doesn't kind of involve taking that final step to qualification. So for example, we have a full business services structure. We've got departments like marketing, brand, business development, responsible business, IT, HR, all of those. And again, they kind of work within the industry. There's certain knowledge and kind of legal learnings that you will have done over time in different ways, but it's not kind of per se that qualified career in law to be a lawyer in order to kind of get into that route or get into those other roles as well. So it's quite kind of a broad way of looking at things too that I just wanted to mention. It's helpful to have in mind. So this is just kind of an outline of kind of how those two different pathways look. And as you can see, they take up the same amount of space on the screen because they do run for the same time. They both take 6 years to complete. And they all kind of have within them all of those different components that I mentioned about the studying, the working. They're just kind of set out in different ways. And in the end, as you kind of look at this will just depend on what you are most interested in doing and kind of what suits you best, really. The key difference to point out between the two is that with the graduate route, so going to college and studying a degree or a law degree, is that you complete all of the academic qualifications before you actually begin working within a law firm. Whereas for apprentices, you will both be working and studying simultaneously. So it's all kind of contained within that giant block of 6-year structured training program. I'll leave that just up on screen just to give you another few moments to take a look through. But you'll see kind of on the graduate route, you have 1, 2, 3 years of study for your undergraduate degree. It then takes you to the graduate ceremony itself, where you get that qualification. You'll then do the SQE, which is that postgraduate qualification, and then you have the 2-year training contract itself. So yeah, as opposed to that apprenticeship route where it is kind of all wrapped in together. Okay, so let's take a look at the solicitor apprenticeship route a bit more closely now. And this is kind of what we'll be focusing on for the rest of, I guess, this event. And there's a few kind of key facts to share with you. So I've mentioned it takes 6 years to complete in itself. The way that that starts actually, so if we just take a look at that arrow across the page, so you've got your GCSEs, you do your A-levels, you then, after finishing your A-levels, whether you're in year 13 now, you take a gap year, or you decide to do something else and then decide to apply. The main thing is that you haven't started an undergraduate degree. So you begin the solicitor apprenticeship itself, you do that program, and you reach that qualified solicitor role. So yeah, 6 years. The apprenticeship involves both study and also on the job learning aspects. And for the solicitor apprenticeship itself, the way that this actually works out is that you'll have 1 day of study per week, and then you have 4 days per week working within the law firm itself. For us, Dentons is still kind of working in a very hybrid manner. So our apprentices kind of have the opportunity to work both in the office or perhaps also work from home as well. How they do that kind of just depends on what works best for them. So kind of a good question to ask them later on. So yeah, so typically for them, they have their Monday study day, and then the rest of the week they're in the office. How the study works is that they complete the law degree, so the LLB, over the first 4 years of the programme, and then they do the SQE exams kind of over the final year. So that part-time study is very much kind of structured by themselves. They work to submit their deadlines, their coursework, and then they do their exams as they go as well. And then at the end of the apprenticeship itself, they become qualified as an England and Wales solicitor. So that's the jurisdiction that they work in. And then, as I've mentioned before as well, they can also apply for associate and newly qualified roles. It might kind of sound quite far off into the future to be speaking about that now at an event where you're just learning about the programme itself. But in the sense of kind of understanding that both the training contract and the solicitor apprenticeship route are equivalent to each other, it's just helpful to mention that at this point now you can kind of see the entire career pathway kind of unfold. Even if you're on this apprenticeship program, you don't have to kind of think it's lesser off or kind of an easier or harder way. It is just kind of equal to that pathway to qualification itself. So they're working within the business, they receive all the benefits of a full-time employee, both the pay, because they are paid, they are an employee of Dentons. They get things like annual leave, they get things like all of the other benefits that our employees get. So that's also kind of a perk too. They will sit in 8 seats across the entire time of the programme. So they all get kind of a really in-depth look to the business, the chance to kind of build great networks, to have a really solid foundation of what commercial law is like, to find out what they're interested in, to practice that, to be exposed to different role models right across the business as well. So it's really kind of a broad and brilliant kind of foundation to the start of a very good career. And then there's a note there about secondments as well. So what secondments are basically placements normally within another business. So we have kind of client secondments, we have also different office secondments to other Dentons offices in the world. These are both open to our trainees and our apprentices together. So from the second year of their apprenticeship onwards, they are able to kind of put down those preferences as seat rotations go around. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So just taking a bit more of a closer look at the work. For us, we have apprentices in London and in Milton Keynes. For this year, we are just recruiting for London only. So just bear that in mind when you're applying. If you are interested in Milton Keynes, I just recommend that you sign up for our student database, and then we'll be in touch kind of as opportunities open up in future years. Like I mentioned before, so 4 days per week working in the office, 1 day of study. And those 8 seats in different practice areas. And we're a full service commercial law firm, so we have all of the practice areas kind of related to commercial law itself. Our clients are other businesses, so anything that they kind of come to the firm for looking for legal help, whether that's employment, whether that's kind of tax, whether that's corporate banking. And we have lots of information on the website about those different practice areas. So if these are just words to you at the moment, I definitely recommend having a look at the website and having a look at what we do, because that'll give you a broader idea of what the work is like. Support is a really big thing as well. So we really appreciate that our apprentices join us at quite a young age, having just left school, and the kind of transition between school and the working environment is different. There's lots to kind of pick up and learn about how you work as an individual, how you work in a team, what responsibilities you have. So there's lots of different support kind of along the way as our apprentices build up that knowledge and they're able to really get stuck into the work itself. They have a dedicated supervisor in each seat that they do. They have also kind of the rest of their apprentice cohort and the trainee cohort to gain support from, to ask questions from. Other people have sat in different practice areas. They can kind of share advice, share tips, and kind of have that support around them too. We have our diversity networks as well. So we have these networks which are formed from different colleagues across the business in offices right across the UK. So we have, for example, a Black Professionals Network, an Asian Professionals Network. We have one for LGBTQ plus colleagues as well. There's one called Accessibility, which is for those with visible and invisible disabilities or other long-term conditions. We have Parent and Carers Network as well. We have Inspire, which is our gender equality network too. So there's lots of kind of networks to both be involved in and to also kind of have support from. They run lots of kind of different awareness network events, and then also other kind of ways of bringing people together with different events or kind of networking and things like that. So that's also really a nice way to get some support from other role models or other people around the business too. Each of the apprentice cohorts have a dedicated mentor too, so someone they can go to outside of the day-to-day work to get in some advice and again kind of further knowledge, or if they have questions that they want to ask, then they can do that too. And then we have a early careers talent development advisor, and there's kind of a lot of emphasis put around apprentice development and kind of really engaging them in the opportunities available and kind of the training and the individual support that they need to. So it's quite a well-rounded support system in that sense. I mentioned a little bit on the training, so there's both kind of on-the-job training from the firm itself, from the program itself. There's also kind of training from the practice areas, from that kind of specific area of law that they might be working in as well. From the supervisor side, there's lots of reviews, feedback. It's all very kind of formalized, the structure around it, and that's really useful and I think important as well, so that people understand how they're growing, where they can see where they can see that, and how they can kind of take that further too. We this year have kind of revamped our entire apprentice induction program. So it's kind of 7 working days long now. We've covered a lot. There's lots of different kind of training workshops as well too. So in terms of kind of facilitating that transition into the business and then going forwards, there's kind of a lot there in terms of training. And then, like I said before, there's lots of firm-wide training and development accessible too. So lots of different opportunities there. Just on the right-hand side, that kind of gives you a bit of an idea about some things which are ongoing pieces of training that our apprentices apprentices will see across the time while they're working at Dentons. So things like core systems, processes, what working in a law firm is all about, research skills, because that's really important for us. That kind of really is something that they'll do on a day-to-day basis. Resilience and well-being is something that is kind of essential as you kind of build up those good habits about how you're working and being in the workplace. So again, great to get started on those from the beginning. Things like law firm economics, understanding the business that you're working within, what effect that has. Creating and developing your personal brand is something a bit more kind of unique to individuals themselves. I won't go through all of them, but again, you can kind of start to see where things match up to how the program might work and what support is that. So taking a little closer look at the study itself, they are in the office, they are studying 1 day a week, the rest of the week they're in the office. Our training provider is BPP, so as they kind of get enrolled onto that LLB, they'll be doing all of that with BPP University. It's blended learning normally, but I do know from this year they all had the opportunity, if they wanted to study in person, then they could do so. It's just that kind of transition back into in-person stuff from the pandemic and from kind of that hybrid model. So online, it takes place with real-time tutorials. They also have coaching days. Portfolio building is important because as part of the apprenticeship, you gather evidence on what you've been working on, and then this goes towards a portfolio, which is then used as part of your submission if you want to complete the program. So again, that kind of portfolio building and the structure around that is something that BPP helped to provide. And the apprentices also have access to the hub, which is this learning platform where everything kind of takes place. So all of that information is in the same place to access. There's lots of kind of different topics and modules. So they have things based on technical knowledge and also skills, which are important. So for example, with technical modules, they'll be looking at different types of law. So contract law, land law, company law, public law, criminal law. And then with skills, it's more based around kind of the soft skills that you'd need in terms of working with clients, working in teams. So client care, researching skills, working with others, advocacy as well. Assessments kind of take place across the entire program, and there's no kind of one exam and you're done. It's kind of a constant ongoing process. So exams take place, I think, each term. Our apprentices also get study leave for that. And then likewise as well, that portfolio that I said that they just keep on building up throughout the time. And with the SQE, again, the acronym, so all apprentices complete this postgraduate qualification towards the end of the programme. There's a lot of support from BPP around kind of how that takes place, what they need to do as they reach something called Gateway. You might hear that phrase if you've been looking into apprenticeships. So yeah, again, it's like there's kind of constant communication between both BPP and us about how our apprentices are doing and what other kind of support they need to reach where they're going. Just to give you a really quick idea on Dentons itself, this is a map of the world and a map of where our offices are. So I mentioned previously, we are a global law firm. We are the world's largest law firm in terms of locations and headcount. So we have a really big presence in Asia and Europe. We have growing offices in Africa and both North and South America as well. The number of countries that we're present in kind of changes all the time. And just in terms of kind of where we work in the UK, Ireland and Middle East region, and that region is kind of home to about 1,500 employees, so it's still kind of a sizable amount. While we have all of those offices spread right across the globe, what we don't actually have is a global headquarters or just one kind of set dominant culture of the firm. It's all kind of from the ground up across all of those different regions and all of those different offices that we have. And this also means that we can work with clients from anywhere in the world and help them with work that involves multiple countries. It also means that we have access to amazing resources and amazing people kind of globally too. And we know that because our clients hire us for that reason, because we can understand all of the different nuances of different cultures and different regions, because we have lawyers working there. Okay. So really briefly running through what is commercial law. So we have these points just here on the screen, so I'll just run through those. So we've not got one type of commercial solicitor. There isn't one type of commercial solicitor. We've got kind of a range of different departments and practice areas where our solicitors specialise in as they become associates and onwards. Our apprentices kind of get the chance to rotate between these different departments, different areas, and they can work out where they want to specialise in their careers as they go through. So across those 6 years, they have 8 different rotations, 8 different chances to experience those areas of law. And commercial law in itself is designed to support those businesses that we work with. And our clients usually just are other organizations or corporations rather than individuals, which is the reason why it makes it corporate work. So those are the businesses themselves. Like I mentioned before, it kind of involves problem solving, legal advice, and also making the most of different opportunities that arise in the commercial world, or I guess kind of lately with COVID pandemic, cost of living crisis, perhaps working with those negatives and kind of trying to make the best of things for those clients to ensure that they're still running. It can start with perhaps creating a company all the way to dissolving them, and the work is really, really varied. Okay. So this is a list of our practice areas that we have. Again, some of those acronyms, they do stand for things. So for example, with ETI, it's energy, transport and infrastructure. People, reward and mobility. It sounds a bit like employment, and it kind of is. We have a lot more information about that on our website, so I definitely recommend that you take a look and have a little bit of a read around what those departments actually entail as well. But our apprentices get the chance to rotate between those and really kind of get to see what work is involved in them. And as they're studying as well, it can be quite a nice way to link up what they are reading about in their textbooks and working through in their workshops to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis and how that looks like. So who do we work for? This is just kind of a bit of a sample of the types of clients that we have and that we work with on a kind of day-to-day basis. Some of them are big names and hopefully you recognize them. And by no means kind of is it just these large names. We also work with different clients according to those different office locations, and there's also lots of different strong links to communities and businesses in the local areas too. So it's quite broad. There can be local work, there can be national work, there can be international work, and some of those names that you can see on the screen there kind of fit into all of those too. Okay, so just to take a quick look at the application process. So the kind of arrow stream that you see on top is our full application process itself for the solicitor apprenticeship. So first stage is an application form. Second stage is the legal high potential assessment. Then we have a video interview, which is not a live interview, it's a recorded one. Following that, we have an insight day. So this is where those who are invited to take part in the assessment centre itself are able to come into the office. They get a bit more information about the firm, a bit more information about what to prepare for and expect at the assessment centre, because we know that it might be the very first assessment centre that people will be doing in their life. So yeah, we kind of aim to make sure that everything's joined up and people know what to expect and how to prepare for that. The final stage is the offer itself, which we make after the assessment centre if someone's kind of performed very well across the whole of that. In terms of academic record, that's also kind of asked for in the application form. So we're looking at ABB at A-level or equivalent, and that also includes kind of international grades. We do take into account extenuating circumstances. So if there is kind of an academic blip along the way, there's space within the form to just jot that down, and so that we're aware, we can understand. And we also use a contextual recruitment system. So we will kind of look to look through applications very holistically, and it's not just kind of academics focused. It's also about kind of your motivations and why you're applying as well. That second stage I've already mentioned too. With the video interview, we have, again, some advice on our website. So I'd really recommend that you take a look at the videos and the tips there, because they'll really walk you through kind of what to expect and how to prepare. And I've just got a few bullet points there on where to start. So you want to kind of research firms. So whoever you're thinking of applying to in terms of a solicitor apprenticeship, attend events like this, do some online research. If they've got kind of virtual internships or virtual work experience, then have a look at that and really start to build up your information and your knowledge about kind of what it looks like and what that firm is all about. It's really helpful to make a short list so that you can really focus on making some high quality applications. And as you kind of get around to making that short list, you want to also find out about things like requirements, deadlines, and then also recruitment methods. There's something called rolling basis, and you'll hear that where law firms will look at applications as they come in and start moving candidates through that process. Whereas some law firms might just recruit on the deadline or after the deadline itself, so they won't kind of look at applications at all until that very final deadline date itself, in which case you might find it more helpful to leave your writing your application until closer to that deadline, as opposed to someone who is looking at and reviewing our applications on that rolling basis. All of that is really to say it's really helpful to prioritize and plan out your time, so you are leaving yourself enough time to check through your own answers, to make sure that you have kind of written them as strong answers, you've not kind of missed any points out, you've checked spelling and grammar, all of those sorts of things, and that puts your application in a very good place. A really brief overview of our application form itself. We have these sections on there, there's 4 of them. Like I mentioned, we have we'll ask for your personal details, as you can imagine. We'll also ask for your education, so where you studied, your grades too. The third on there is work experience, but this is more so kind of, it's just about things that you've been involved in. If you've kind of been involved in extracurriculars, volunteering, positions of responsibility, think about those sorts of things. It's helpful to include that in there if you have got them. Our questions, our longer answer questions or supporting questions you might hear if you're looking at kind of researching applications, these are more about your chance to stand out and share about yourself. So they're longer kind of free text boxes where you can talk about your motivations, your skills, your strengths, your drive, your ambition, how that all kind of fits into why you're looking to do a career in commercial law with Dentons through the solicitor apprenticeship. So really spend your time on those questions. There's 250 words kind of word limit for each of those, and I think the main kind of piece of advice is that if you're falling quite short of that, think about what else you can include, think about how you might want to rework your answer, and just kind of make sure that it's really well rounded, yeah, as you kind of come to submit. I've also got that bullet point on communication. So this is something that's important to all firms and kind of pretty much all businesses that you'll be looking to apply to in the future. For us, we're looking at a candidate's communication throughout their application form. And yeah, that includes things like spelling and grammar, but it's also about kind of the flow, the clarity of your answers. Are you repeating things, or are you actually being concise and clear as you give your answer? So attention to detail is really key with this, but also, like I said, giving yourself that time to write a high quality application. So that's really important. And then just briefly in terms of how we score our applications. So we give each of those sections of the application form a score. We add up all of those scores, and then if they meet the benchmark, then your application will move forward to the next stage. All of our applications are screened by people. They're read one by one, so it's not done by software. There's no kind of automatic decline for things like academics or not meeting the minimum criteria in terms of grades. So it's all about kind of really putting the time in right across the entire application itself. Just a few kind of top tips in terms of application advice. So we do ask you to put yourself in context. Like I mentioned, kind of explain any unexpected grades or gaps in your education. With your work experience, helpful to include things like transferable skills. It is really more about kind of understanding you, understanding your strengths, and having that self-awareness to include what those transferable skills are, again, really helps to make that kind of section a bit stronger. Be careful with copy and paste. You might be making other applications, you might be applying to other law firms. What we don't really want to see is another firm's name in your application form, because then we know that you've not really checked your work, and things like that. So just be mindful about that as you use copy and paste. Proofreading for spelling mistakes, and also checking the structure. So again, just that kind of point on attention to detail. I've already touched upon word limits. So again, if you're falling short, just see what else you need to include in or what you need to rework. And avoid using legal jargon and cliches. So it might sound like an interesting phrase to use, but if you're not kind of using it in the right way, if you don't understand what you're using, then it's probably not worth including it in. Things like, for example, both legal jargon but also cliches. If you say that you're a people person or you think outside the box, it doesn't actually tell us too much about you as an individual. So just kind of rephrase it, put it into a sentence, and if you really truly believe that you are one in a million, then actually do give that evidence as well, because again, that will just help us to understand you rather than just a flashy phrase. So just going to leave this up for a moment. It's an overview of opportunities. We have our virtual work experience program. It's called Experience Dentons, and I guess anyone on this call can get started with that. It's 5 days worth of work experience. It's all done virtually, unsupervised. You can start it at any time because it's open access, and then you can just work through at your own pace. You do get a certificate of completion at the end, but it's just something that you work through yourself. The Solicitor Apprenticeship, which most of you will be here kind of finding out more information from. That information is up there on the website too, and applications are open now. They will close on the 15th of January, and that deadline is a fixed deadline. We also have a Insight event coming up on the 5th of December too. So again, if you're kind of just looking to find out more about the firm and hearing from our apprentices as well, that'd be really useful. So you can sign up for that on the website as well. Great. And we'll be joined by 2 of our apprentices now. So Amia and hopefully Harith. Yes, great. Hi both. I'll let you to introduce yourselves, and then I'll move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Rafali. Yes. Hi everyone. I'm Harith, and Amia, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Amia.
And yes, as Rafali said, we're both solicitor apprentices at Dentons.
Do you want to share which years you're in as well?
Good idea. So I'm currently in my 4th year of the apprenticeship. So nearing the end relatively, but still got a little ways to go.
And I'm in my 2nd, so the beginning, still got about a few years to go.
Great. I will hand over to you now and put myself on mute. I'll move on to the next slide too before I go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so we've put together some top tips for you when applying for the solicitor apprenticeship or any sort of junior legal role. And Ami and I will walk through these. I think the first one you'll see on the slide is to show enthusiasm and confidence. I think this goes without saying, right? But I think it's really, really vital. You've got your academic grades, that's important, of course. You've got all the other application bits and bobs that you need to do. But if you're not enthusiastic about what you want to do, and if you're not confident in yourself when you're attending the interview or when you're even just completing the application form and filling out those details that Rupali touched on earlier, then I think you're really going to struggle, because you need to be enthusiastic. You need to be confident. I think those are 2 very key words.
I think I'm building off from enthusiasm. Sorry, my voice might be a bit down, by the way. I think reaching out to professional individuals. LinkedIn is a profile platform for this. Giving someone a quick message and just being like, I've come across your profile and I'm interested to know more. A little does go a long way. Obviously, don't be annoying about it. Don't message the same person multiple times, but if you send someone a message, they might reply and they might give you good and solid advice. And often you could message someone who's senior or maybe within the same age range as you if they have any advice. And just doing that, you can learn a lot more than just from Googling stuff, because sometimes like you're not going to get all the information from a quick search. So it's nice to talk to some people before you apply to a place and kind of see what's the environment like.
Yeah, I mean, I've had plenty of people message me, and there's often times when I can't get back to them because I don't have the time to revert. But sometimes I do, and obviously, like Anya said, don't spam people. You don't want to annoy people. But I think you can always reach out to. I mean, there's hundreds of apprentices. If you feel most comfortable speaking to an apprentice, you might want to reach out to someone who's doing that role. Okay, so the next tip on there is to prioritize legal work experience. So of course, getting good grades is important, and you need to be focusing on your academic studies, your A-levels, whatever it may be, but don't forget about legal work experience. You'll learn a lot of transferable skills, a lot of specific legal skills working at a law firm, even if it's just a local law firm or any of these insight days that Dentons do, anything like that. You'll learn a lot about the firm, about law, you learn a lot of soft skills, and that includes, I mean, there's also the option to become a paralegal if you wish before you progress to be a solicitor.
And obviously, that being said, don't neglect other work experiences. I think often we have it in our head that if we're applying in a legal career, we have to do legal work experience, but you can get so many skills and you can learn so much from other things, that just life skills that you'll have to use in any sort of workplace, and it doesn't have to be legal. So I think I saw someone on the chat mention, is virtual more important or is it in person? I think post-COVID, a lot of people are open to the fact that virtual works, and I don't think any law firm would discriminate against you if you only have virtual. Obviously try and go in person, because the atmosphere and environment of a law firm is equally as important. But the main thing is, don't just think, oh, I'm not going to include my work experience in retail. Or I think Harith worked at McDonald's before doing this, and I did tuition. So like you can pick up on a lot of skills, so don't disregard that.
No, absolutely. I guess the next point on that list is to apply to as many job opportunities as you can. So if you're looking to do the solicitor apprenticeship, of course, Dentons is the best one and you should apply. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but yeah, slightly biased. But you should apply to as many as you can, because yes, it may be disheartening, very disheartening to get 100 rejections, but all you need is that one acceptance. You really don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Harith Ahmed 2023. Following on from that, your CV. Now, Dentons doesn't require a CV in their application, but some law firms do. And the structure of it is just as important as the content of it, because bearing in mind, this is your first introduction for a lot of places. This is what they will more or less judge you on. So you do want to spend time just kind of making sure it's neat, it's tidy, it's got good points in it. Whatever experiences you do have, you can really highlight the skills that you picked up from it, and try and pick skills that you think, work in the legal sector as well, and why it would be good as well. But yeah, make sure you have a nice CV, because it needs to look nice as well.
Yeah, and the same goes for when you're applying to Dentons. You may not submit a CV, but you will do an application. And like Rupali said earlier, you really want to spend time on that and make sure, I mean, this is the first thing that the firm will see of you. So you really need to make sure it's your best self that you're putting forward. The next tip we have prepared, the penultimate tip it seems, is to always prepare for job assessments and interviews. So I think this also goes without saying. I mean, you don't want to turn up to an interview with no idea what you're going to talk about. That being said, of course, you don't want to have a script that you're gonna follow. I think it will sound very robotic, and your interviewer will be able to tell if you're just you've just memorized the script and you're reading off it. But having ideas of answers to typical questions, why do you want to study law, or why do you want to join Dentons? What interests you about Dentons as a firm? Stuff like that, I think, is really crucial. Obviously, the confidence point, the first point I mentioned, is really important as well. I think most people, if not all people who apply to these sorts of things, come out of interviews thinking they've done terribly. But chances are you have done a lot better than you think you have. Equally, if you have any assessments that you need to do to enter into a law firm, or do the solicitor apprenticeship, prepare for those as well. Even if it seems like it's just something you need to do quickly and get it done, it always helps to be prepared to understand how it works.
And lastly, I know Rupali spoke about commercial awareness, so I won't go on for it too much, but in terms of like apprenticeships and your applications, I think a lot of people actually don't understand what commercial awareness is. I mean, in its simplest form, it's literally like the business world meets the law world. But in terms of your application, I would always say try and make it as personal as well as professional as you can. And by that, I mean, don't be afraid to throw in an anecdote, or don't be afraid to kind of show like, look, I can see that you guys specialize in this, or these are the sectors you offer, and I have an interest in whatever sector as well, you know, and kind of really show that you are passionate about this. Like I remember in my interview, I was talking about the environment sector because I had studied that for my politics A levels, and that was something that I was really into at that time, and I mentioned it in my interviews, and they really said like that's a good thing, like because you're showing that you've done your research on the firm and that you've got a genuine interest in it as well. So find a way to balance the two and kind of be flexible about it. But that concludes our top tips that we would give.
Thanks, guys. That was really, really useful. We've had quite a few questions, so I'm going to try and keep it brief, just for about 10 minutes or so. But I think the first question that quite a few students have asked is all about A-levels. And so what do you recommend? Is law required? What A-levels did you do? That would just be sort of really useful for the students to know tonight.
I mean, I sat mine last year, so I think I'll go first. I think when it comes to A-levels, I always say, because you get 3 if you do 4, you know, that's different, but most do 3. And I always say, go for these 3 things: something that you were really good at, something that you have a genuine interest and passion in, and something that you can reasonably understand will help you in your future career. Now, I respect that not everyone knows in sixth form what they really want to do, but I think a lot of people do have an idea by that point. So for me, I did politics, history, and then religious studies, and it's split because like politics I thought was a good link to law. History I was good at in GCSE, so I thought I can continue that, and I've just always had an interest in RE, which actually helped because philosophy is, you know, it helps with your legal degree. So that's how I would personally split it.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. But I think you mentioned that some people are worried they have to do law, and this is something I was worried about when I was doing my A-levels. So you don't, and Rupali can shout if I'm absolutely waffling, but you don't have to study law. And I know a lot of people at my sixth form said, oh, if you want to do law, then study English and history. And I absolutely hated history, so I didn't want to study it.
Can't relate.
Sorry, Amia, but you don't have to do any specific subjects. It does help. I think I studied English, and it really did help in the way I think and the way I formulate what I write. But I did English literature, computer science, and sociology. So it's a very mixed bag. So don't feel obliged to do something that you really don't want to do, or you know you're really not good at.
Yeah, and just really quickly, someone said, can you apply to both apprenticeships and universities? Yes, you can. It does not limit it. You don't have one or the other. You can apply to as many apprenticeships. In fact, apprenticeships you can apply to as many as you want. Universities, you're limited to 5. So, you know, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's really, really useful. And then obviously you're going to be sort of studying and working during the apprenticeship. And so it'd be really useful, firstly, sort of your experience at BPP University, because a couple of students aren't really familiar with them as a training provider, and sort of how do you manage that work-study split? And if you've got any tips of managing that, should these students be successful and sort of join you guys at Dentons, hopefully?
I say one thing when I get asked about this, I say you have to be very honest with yourself before you apply for apprenticeships, because the truth is it's not really always easy, and because it is a lot because you're working and you're studying. And so you really need to be honest with yourself and think, am I motivated? Am I the type of person who can really get along and do work? Because bearing in mind, you're treated like an adult. I think that was one of the biggest things for me, from going straight from school into like a professional environment where people are talking about their 30 years of experience and their children and their spouses, and I'm like, I just left school. So I think you've got to be really honest with yourself, knowing, are you the type of person who can push yourself, because it does get challenging. But if you have a good schedule or good balance, and you know that you can balance the two and handle it, then it's not impossible. Like, you can do it.
I think I'll probably say the flip side to that. Sorry, Alia. Again, don't feel too intimidated. Yes, you have to manage your time, and you have to be responsible with yourself. But at the same time, don't feel like you're going to get overwhelmed. At least for the first few years, you're not working till midnight every single day, or you're not studying every weekend. It's nothing like that. You get the Mondays off to study. And you are, I mean, the firm generally appreciates that you are working and studying at the same time. So they don't expect you to be working till midnight or 2 a.m. every day.
Fab. And then Rupali, this is probably a question for you, sort of with regards to quite a few students seem to be doing T-levels or BTECs, and they were just wondering if they can also apply with BTEC or T-level pathway.
Yeah, so yes, you can. And again, much like A-levels and the subjects that you study, we're not really you're not restricted in terms of what you have studied in order to apply to the solicitor apprenticeship that we have. What we are looking for is that equivalent to an ABB. So I think that totals up to like 125 UCAS points. Might have to check the tariff calculator again, but I think it's around that. So kind of, again, if you're studying your T-levels, if you're doing a BTEC, it's that equivalent that we're looking for. As it's not just us who are asking for that, it's also BPP in terms of enrolling onto that LLB degree itself.
Great. And then with the virtual, the experience sentence, virtual work experience, is that open to all age groups, year groups, or is it predominantly for 13s?
So it's open to anyone 16 years and over, and like I said, open access can be started at any time. Save it, come back to it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever, it's fine. Yeah.
Great. And then another question that we seem to be getting quite a lot as well, in terms of the actual experience that you guys have had at Dentons, do you guys have the opportunity to sort of mix with teams? Do you choose sort of the teams that you go down, the routes that you go down, or is it quite sort of an open and friendly, you can ask questions in different departments? How does that sort of work?
So like Rupali mentioned, we do 8 seats over the course of 6 years. So the first 4 years you're an apprentice and you'll do it for 1 whole year, and then the last 2 years you're treated like a trainee, so you do 6-month rotations. And I personally think we're really good in that, because I know there are law firms out there who make, you might be in a seat for 4 years or for 3 years or not enough. But I think it's a good balance, because you can, you really get the chance to lay your roots. Like, you get to meet with so many people, different teams, and of course your experiences in every team is different. But on the whole, it's quite good in terms of the connections you make and the type of skills you can pick up over the course of 6 years. So I think it's good.
I don't feel I have anything to add to that, so well covered on there.
And then Rupali, just another one as well, for students who've got sort of diverse abilities, disabilities, neurodivergency, when they are applying, should they let you know, is there sort of a person that they should speak to about that?
Yeah, so there's space within the application form itself. So if you're looking to let us know about any adjustments that we should be making, feel free to include it in there, and that's kind of across the whole recruitment process. If there's anyone who's kind of reaching that application form and they're quite like, okay, I need kind of extra support, or I have questions about this, then just get in touch with us. Our email address is graduaterecruitment@dentons.com. We're on the website as well. So you can just reach out to us. You can have a confidential chat with one of the members of the team, and hopefully we can kind of reassure you and just kind of answer all of your questions as well. But yeah, please don't be put off about applying if there is something in there and you think, okay, that I am not a traditional candidate in this sense. Don't kind of disclude yourself or exclude yourself from that sense.
That's great. And then I always love to finish off on this question, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here, but in terms of the apprenticeship and your journey at Dentons, what's been the biggest highlight, your biggest takeaway, and probably the most important lesson that you've learned, sort of encapsulated in one?
I mean, Harriet has 3 years on me, so I think he can start with that.
Thanks for throwing me on the bus.
What's your biggest highlight?
Okay. I'm going to dodge the question a little bit with my answer. So I've just started reading a book called Atomic Habits. It's a good book. You could check it out. And essentially, I've only started it, so I might have only a little bit of the knowledge of it. But it's the small little things. It really is the small little things that you learn and you develop over the entirety of the apprenticeship. I mean, 6 years is a long time. You really do learn little things, and you don't realize that as you're going. I mean, I think the biggest area I've developed has not been my legal knowledge. It's been my soft skills, my confidence, my commercial awareness, my ability to speak to people well, ability to speak on things like this. There's a lot of things you learn as you go. And I'll pass it to Armin.
I think building on from that, he's so right in that sense. In like, for me, the biggest highlight so far hasn't really been one specific thing. It's been the case that I'm surrounded by so many like-minded people. I think, this pathway, it's very niche, it's very specific, and you're surrounded, and not just even within the firm, because you network, you meet apprentices across different firms, and you realize you're very like-minded. Like, it's like finding your people basically, because you're on the same path, you're experiencing the same things. You will, even little things like, maybe feeling a bit distant from your uni friends because they finish quite early whilst you're still working, so your schedules might be different, but you're really on a path where you meet so many people, and even like people who are older than you and have so much wisdom and so much advice to offer you, like from what they've been through. So I think that's been my favorite thing in terms of just meeting all these people.
Oh, that's really, really good to hear. So thank you guys for joining us, and thank you to everyone who sort of carved out an hour of your evening. We really, really appreciate it. We have made a log of all of the questions, and we will pass it over to the team. And this will be recorded and sort of uploaded to our YouTube channel tomorrow, and you guys will all get the link to that as well. But I just want to say another massive thank you to Dentons. Hopefully you've all walked away feeling a little bit more inspired. I know I have. The apprenticeship is really, really exciting, and we do wish you sort of all the best with applying, and hopefully you'll get to see the team at Dentons soon. But thank you guys, and we hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.